Hi there, welcome to my channel. Today we are working on a Knitmaster Mod 100. We are going to do the faire-Isle stitch. This machine was a little bit tricky doing faire-Isle because I had to really kind of figure it out. Here I am casting on so that we can figure out how to do the faire-Isle. Here I am changing the thread and taking the thread off, and basically what I was doing here was just to take the yarn and actually place it onto the floor so that I could work separately with the yarn for the two colors. I found it much easier to work with the yarn separate and also to not use a tension unit, and you can just use it by hand, and I found it much easier to use and it was much easier to work with the stitches. These are the two colors on the floor that I'll be using. This is the second color, and I use this second color first when you're actually doing your actual faire-Isle, because it works out much easier for you to see the actual stitches. Here is the second color that I'm threading through. As you can see, it isn't going through the tension unit, and most of it will be, the yarn will actually be held by hand. Here I am just tying it so that it stays fast, so as you pull the yarn by hand you can feel the tension. This machine is very basic. There really isn't much to it once you figure out how to do the faire-Isle. Here I am using the needle selector, and it said that you should put it on 8 and you should put it on C. C actually means the C position, which is actually which is in between the working position and the holding position. The instructions said that you take the first 4 needles and you use the needle selector to select your needles. Once the needle selector has been done, I found that what you had to do next was you needed to take 4 of those other needles and put them into B position. And the reason why you need to put them in B position, because you will only be knitting the needles that are in C position. I only used the needle selector just once, because I found that it was just easier to do it by hand to bring the needles back into C position that I was going to work with. Because as you can see, doing this is actually quite time consuming, so if you had to do this for every row, it would just take a long time to do. This is a instruction for a pattern that's basically a stripy pattern that uses just 2 colors. I had to work in 2 rows. That means one color would have 2 rows, so I would work from right to left, and then I would do left to right again with the same color. It's always good to bring the last needle to working position if it's a contrast color. Place the lever into its circle position. Push all the needles that you're going to knit with into the C position, because it doesn't knit in the D position, and that's how you get your faire-Isle. If you're working with the stitches, it is important that you make sure that all your needles are in C position. This is where you do your first row. As you can see, I'm holding the yarn, and you just got to feel the tension as you go over the needles. The first row is usually the more tricky one, so just watch your needles and check that everything's been knitted in. Here I am doing the second row, and basically I'm just knitting the same needles I knitted on the first place. You could, if you do a more elaborate type of faire-Isle, you would have yarn on the other side and you would knit every row separately, but here I just found it easier just to knit the 2 rows and just work from the left hand side. Just make sure that you have the one needle on the side when you're working with the contrast yarn. Basically that just helps prevent holes, and I will show you later in the video just what happens if you don't use a needle. Here I am doing the second row, and this is how you do your faire-Isle. Here I am going to change the yarn to the main yarn. When you work your colors out, just make sure that you thread it correctly. When you have knitted the main yarn, I'm now doing the second yarn again, the secondary color, and this is basically how it works. It's really quite simple once you get it along, and don't forget to put your extra needle on the end so that it doesn't make holes. Here I am putting the needles into C position. You just need to make sure that when you are actually knitting, all your faire-Isle is in the C position. It doesn't matter which needles you're using or which needles you've pulled out. As long as your needles are in the B position, they will not knit. If they're in the D position, they will not knit. Just make sure that the needles you are going to be using are in the C position. I am pulling the needles to D position, but I'm only doing that just to show you just where the needles are supposed to go. Eventually, as you knit faster, you will actually put them into C position, which will make it go a little bit faster, and it will be easier then once you get the hang of it. I found this knit quite slow to do. Basically it was because of the camera in front, but as I practiced I found that it got a bit easier and it went a little bit faster. So it's just a case of practicing to work on the actual needles, and then once you get the hang of it, it becomes much easier. Here I am working in the main yarn. It's very much the same as the second yarn or the second color, and it's just a case of doing the repeats. And as I was saying, just make sure when you have a contrast needle, just to put the extra needle into the front so you can knit it in so you don't create a hole. This machine hadn't been used for a long time, so when I was knitting with it I found that it was getting a little bit stuck. That's only because it hasn't been used for a long time, and I did find the needles a little bit stiff to work with. But you know, as I was knitting along it got a bit easier and the machine seemed to work a little bit better. I suppose it's just a case of being able to use it to make it work better. Making sure that the needles are in C position, because that's the needles that you'll be knitting with on whatever color you are using. Here I am. I've basically done about 49 rows, and now I'm going to do just one more row of 50 rows, which will be in the contrast yarn. It won't be the main yarn. Once I've done this row and I'm going into the main yarn, I'll be just doing normal knitting just to finish it off. Yeah, I almost forgot the last needle for the contrast yarn, or should I say contrast needles that I was using, and that's just to prevent holes from happening at the end of the knitting when you're finished. This is going to be my last row of knitting the faire-Isle, and basically what I'll be doing is I'll be just finishing it off with just ordinary knitting with the main yarn or the main color that you'll be using. Here you change the lever to the triangle shape, that's your knitting, and you just change your yarn so you can do basic knitting. Here I am just knitting. I should have actually put it through the tension unit, but I thought I'd just do it by hand. It is a little bit tricky by hand because, you know, if you're not used to the how to work tension, you can make it a little bit more difficult to work with. But overall, this was fine. I actually did find that after a while working with the yarn without the tension unit was actually, it seemed to be okay. Here I'm finished, and now I'm just going to cast off or just take the knitting off the machine so I can show you what it looks like. This is what the knitting looks like. It actually looks quite good. I was quite surprised how it came out. I really like the two colors. It looks really interesting. Here is another sample I made beforehand. I was struggling not to prevent the holes. There's the hole that happens with the knitting, and I had to kind of figure out what to do. And basically all you had to do was just add an extra needle at the end of it. This was what it looks like at the back of it. It was an interesting knit. Would I do this again? Yes, I would. I really like this stripy knit, and I think maybe I might make a garment somewhere in the future with the stripy knit. It was just a case of hit and miss to see how it worked. I do find this knitting a little bit slow, so I have to kind of figure out whatever project I do that, you know, it won't take too long. I want to say thank you for watching. Please subscribe and leave a comment. I will be looking at the next project to see what I'm going to do next. I probably might do a tuck stitch, or I might see if I can do some of the lace work and then just work from there, and just to have a look and see whatever project that comes along. I want to say thank you for watching, and see you next time.